Finally.
Finally, lo and behold, we're now talking about the leg drag. And so we're going to be talking about this with that shin control with the two hands and talking about stepping off to the side to get that angle first, so now we can lead into it. There are many different ways that you're going to see a leg drag or a knee cut performed. Like we said, this is just how we're going to teach it. It works fundamentally and it works at a high level too. What I'm looking to do, frame, I'm stepping off to the side to get Rob to follow. Now, as Rob had said in the previous video, we're looking for two responses. We're looking for either the legs to be wide open or the legs to be close together. By the legs being closer together, or at least more off to the side, I'm going to have an easier time being able to redirect the legs past me without getting caught. If Rob has the legs more open, as we talked about with being in the headlights, this is also like a big net that Rob's casting that with this leg back further here, if I try to redirect right now, I risk him being able to extend and catching me right here. I still have great options from here, but it screwed up my first line of attack. So what I'm looking for right now with the leg drag is that the feet are usually closer together, or at least a bit more on the outside of me. What I'm looking to do is take these frames, and I'm looking to switch my position of my arms so I'm going to be able to redirect the legs past me like this. This arm is just going to be creating like a little bit of a light pull to help redirect past it. This arm is the big key point where I'm switching from here to bring my elbow down to create a frame like this, so I'm going to be able to guide Rob's leg across my center line. Still using that C grip. As I do that, I want to take a big step in with my left leg here. This is all about placeholders, which I'll break down a little bit more here. So as I step off to the side and Rob's following me, I'm redirecting like this. My job is to get both his legs across my center line so that I'm on the outside here. As we recognize from when we were working on guard retention, this is bad. By me having these frames still, I'm still got this contact with my hand against his shin, this hand against his shin here. I'm stepping in to create a placeholder with this knee driving deep and preferably even over top of his leg a bit here, so that I'm having a little bit more of this doubled up control. If I'm stepped in shallow, anytime when we're doing guard passes, we need to be closing that distance, even if it's just a little bit at each time, depending on the style of the guard pass that we're doing. Unless, like if I don't do that, there's gonna be that space that Rob's gonna be always able to react and do these defensive movements. So if I do a leg drag and do this, Rob's just gonna keep his knee, he probably won't even have to actually do anything. If I step in and I don't close the space, Rob's gonna perform a high leg off this and adjust his movement. I wanna make sure that I keep redirecting him off to the side here, so I'm keeping this arm extended. I got this tight to my hip. I'm bringing my chest down and start trying to block to the side of his knee. From here, I'm trying to make sure that my leg is replacing this by accessing his leg as a lever by kicking into the back of the knee. This helps turn his hips, and so that then when I release this arm, it's gonna be harder for him to adjust his leg all the way over. You can see how he needs a lot of flexibility to do so. If I don't step in, I don't have a placeholder, so once I let go with my left arm, there's nothing controlling that right leg. That's just gonna go right back in. So here, step off to the side, I redirect, I kick in. If you step in deep enough, you're gonna actually turn your opponent with it. From here, placeholder system, that leg is taking over the control of this arm. I can even start dropping down to the knee. We'll go over that in a sec. I'm gonna bring this arm over top of his knee here. That's gonna be the next placeholder before this right arm has even been released. Here, controlling so that now when I let go and bring my right arm out, if Rob tries to move that leg, it is stuck. If I do not have that placeholder, and I go here, and I take that arm away first, he just brings his knee to his chest and it's gone. One of the big problems that we run into with a leg drag is that Rob's able to adjust his hip and is able to frame with his femur and his shin across my body. I want to try and keep his knee on the outside like this, so that then if he's trying to move, he's using small weak muscles to try and just move his knee out like this, rather than being able to frame it here and shove me back. Step off, redirect. Now I start to bring this knee down to keep pinning. This is gonna help me level change and bring my armpit over top of his knee, covering the top of his thigh, so that that knee cannot get in. If I covered this on top like this, I didn't actually do anything. Him bringing his knee to his chest, as we talked about tight knee elbow connection with guard retention, I need to stop his leg from being able to do this and opening out. Here, if it's no gi, you can just grab at the hip. You can even grab the head. Anything.
Provided you're not reaching and extending.
Not reaching and extending. In the gi, you can grab the collar, or you can grab the belt, or the pants, the loop of the pants. Making sure that we're keeping nice knee elbow connection here, not extending ourselves too much. Now, a cool detail that Rob went over with us is instead of just bringing your knee over and stapling the leg like this, Rob has the ability to still put his foot in base and might be able to perform a hip escape to recompose his ankle. As I'm dropping, I want to take my foot and actually start hooking behind his calf upwards towards his ankle. It's going to be dependent on the build between you and your opponent, training partner, of where this goes. I'm putting my knee down into the pocket of his hip and keeping the toes engaged. So that now if Rob tries to put his foot in base, it's very weak. What this means is that instead of me keeping my center line lined up with Rob's here, is I'm actually starting to turn my body more perpendicular here to keep that pinned. So if Rob tries to move from here, oh geez, very strong control.
And another thing that's actually really important about that is, when we talked about framing with the biceps, what people tend to do when they're passing is like, he wants ultimately his chest to go here. So if you just kind of think about what's directly in front of you and how you're trying to get there, if he keeps driving forward, this bicep frame is really, really powerful. Right? I can actually recover my guard. Whereas if he uses that instep control and just rotates his torso away from me, he can disconnect this biceps frame very easily. It's counterintuitive. You want to get here with your chest, so you think that turning away is actually bad for you. But because of the amount of control you've got here and the wedges you've got in place, the one frame that I've got going for me, you can disconnect from that frame by rotating your body away from me while still maintaining this, and you're basically turning me further and further away from where I need to be, which is trying to face you and set up my frames. So like normally we don't really get into the biceps frame stuff when we talk about passing, but that detail is really helpful for avoiding the implications of that biceps frame.
And so once I'm in like this position, my toes can absolutely still be in base here. It's okay if they're off the ground here because I have my knee here. So it's going to be what kind of feels comfortable, and depends on how much control you actually have of this leg. I got that knee elbow connection. This leg is going to be posted because I want to maximize my base to be able to
rotate around a little bit.
Drive into my opponent. My goal is to continue driving up towards his head and his chest. If I'm on my knee, I don't have the ability to actually drive. We want to think like if I was sprinting or I'm about to have like a football linebacker just run into me from this angle, I'm posting my leg so that I'm able to drive at a force vector in the proper direction to oppose any of the force. Like if Rob's trying to push on me with his arms, this leg is going to overwhelm anything he tries to throw at me. If my foot's posted, but my knee is above my ankle, close to his butt, I don't actually have very good base out to the side. Because Rob might still be able to generate some force here with a leg press here, not very much. But if I'm in poor base and he extends into my hip, that'd be pretty embarrassing. So base, even as we start to get into these really dominant positions, alignment, your posture, your structure, and your base is really important. Here, live toes posted at this angle, so that now I'm able to drive into Rob regardless of what he does from here. And now I'm going to be looking to move around to finish into side control. So depending on how much he's twisted, if he's trying to face me still, we recognize that his posture is going to be broken because his hips are pointing this direction, his chest is pointing towards me. It should be pretty easy for us to start to control the arms, to turn them off to the side here, looking to control upwards of the shoulder. And where I can start connecting my chest towards like his chest or towards his back, it's going to create me great options here. Because I'm slow and I'm steady right now, I'm not risking giving up momentum. As long as I don't shift my center of gravity too much on top of him in some dumb way, if I can fall over, we're going to be okay here. So we can start to put a little bit of pressure on our opponent, lean onto them. What I'm looking at do from here is keeping this elbow in front of his legs. I can start to move towards an underhook if I wanted to, so that I can start to just move around tight to his hips, his back, so I'm going to be able to settle into side control, preferably with something like a underhook and a crossface, because you've done such a good job breaking your opponent's alignment this whole time. You want to keep it broken as we get into those dominant positions, rather than thinking like, oh, I'm right there, so I can just kind of hop over, settle into side control, or I'll take a break once I'm here, and then Rob can start to shift into defense mode, get himself into proper alignment. You never want to give your opponent any room to breathe.
Yeah, and that actually brings up a good point, which is when you complete the pass. So if we get on to back, or when you're looking to complete the pass, right? I'm outside of Rory's guard right now. I'm at his hips. There will be some frames that I may need to work into. He may even get up onto his elbow. And this is a scenario where people can run into trouble. Like, well, I did the leg drag, I got all this stuff into place, I got my foot in base. Now let me finish this pass. Ah, crap. So securing the pass means isolating the other person, denying them the ability to regard. So you will have to have some battles occasionally here. When we're dealing with an elbow frame, we may be able to just like blade our torso and change that frame into a lever. We may have to disconnect and redirect, and when we redirect, we're not even really thinking of moving the arm very much. We're more just, again, placeholder system. I put this here so Rory's elbow can't move, and then I just duck in behind it and grab his head. If he's up on his elbow and I manage to redirect this and he stays on his elbow, I may take a motorcycle grip here, so I'm reaching my left arm underneath, grabbing his wrist, taking my right arm, pulling this in, collapsing him. So you can see there, based on the various results, we may end up with a scenario where I take Rory's back, or we may end up with a scenario where he immediately throws his shoulders to the mat and I have to settle for chest to chest. That's not going to be up to me. That's the important thing to remember here. I'm going to leg drag you, and you're going to choose whether I take your back or whether I settle into side control. If I try to choose and I try to insist too much on the wrong one, I may end up with somebody getting their guard back, and all that work I did to get there will disappear in an instant. So be wary that once you're at the hips, when you're dealing with these frames, when you're dealing with someone's base, like Rory just mentioned, my alignment, I gotta have 3. His alignment, he's gotta have 2, preferably 1. He won't have 0, but if he does, well then this will all be really easy. But just keep that in mind. We're discussing getting past the legs to get to the hips and getting to, either side control or the back. But it's going to be highly contingent on your opponent as to what they choose to do. Once you start to work your way towards the hips, towards the chest, the more progressive your control is, honestly, the more likely you are to end up with side control, because you will just dismantle all their frames and put them flat on their back. But if somebody reacts a little bit earlier or is more willing to turn away to avoid side control, and that is not really, like, as a beginner, if you're not interested in competition, this is a meaningless thing. But if you are interested in competing, oftentimes back takes will flow from not wanting to give up a guard pass. So it may behoove me as a competitor to practice turning away and trying to recover my guard that way, rather than turning in and conceding side control because I'm worried about my back being taken. These are not pure jiu-jitsu questions anymore. These are not technical questions. These are competition considerations, and your appetite for risk reward as a competitor will determine how you do that. So just something I wanted to cover, because as a beginner, depending on your interests, you might wonder why somebody would turn away or turn in, why somebody might just concede side control, and that'll be part of the equation when you're trying to complete a leg drag.
Yeah, there's a lot of information to these passes once we get into the main potatoes of this, because it is such a complicated battle. So you might have watched this video so far and be like, man, there's a lot of information. That's why we had those videos separate before, to prime you setting up to this, because it's going to make you that much more successful. The beginning part of the leg drag is where you're going to see a lot more variations. You might see people grabbing the pants or just grabbing the leg and dragging it across.
Yeah, let's just so people can
Nothing wrong with those.
Yeah.
We just like to have this option, if you have seen like the Mendez brothers, or I'll have their name underneath there. I really recommend watching them. They have incredible movement, and this is where that leg drag, if you practice it to your left and your right side, you're going to be able to really mess with your opponent, because they're not going to know where you're going. When you first work on a pass, you're going to get good at it. But if everyone knows exactly what side you're trying to pass, which is always their right, your left usually for the majority of people, Rob knows what he's going to shut down. But if I'm able to continually step around and drag different directions, it's going to make it so much more harder for him to adjust to that. And it's harder for him to feel it and know exactly where I'm going. When I bring one of my hands across like this,
I wonder what side you're going to pass me to.
I do have the benefit, though, of extra horsepower now, because I have this anchored gi, so I might be able to really force this to go. Now, the setup was different, where I'm taking this leg, I'm backing my hips away, and I'm rolling across the body, and I'm punching my arm back. But everything starts to get the same here, in the sense that I need placeholders. I'm dropping my knee, and I'm hooking here at the calf. I got my leg in proper base. The difference now is that instead of having my arm over top of his knee here or here, is that I got a deep grip at the gi, and I'm punching with my knuckles with my arm locked out. So if Rob tries to bring his knee up, to his chest,
No chance.
he can't do so. And now the same way I'm going to be able to work to control the head, control the leg in a way. Here I'll go say for like a cradle, so I can bring his knee upwards towards his head, keeping his posture broken and his base denied. So I can go here and settle into side control. So setup was different, but everything once we start getting to what the knee's on, it's going to be a very similar finish every time. You see guys are finishing leg drags like this. So here, this was no-gi. I could grip just 2-on-1. I gotta back my hips away because if I just stay close to him here, I'm just gonna pull him into my groin and I'm not really into that. So here I back away, and I pull his leg across. I have to step in deep to keep him redirected. I'm gonna keep that tension on his shin as best I can to bring in my armpit over his knee. I'm dropping myself down here. Then I can start to work on controlling, opening up that space, breaking him down, breaking his posture, moving into a tight side control, making sure that his alignment's broken the whole time. So recommend at first working on the shin grips and looking to redirect, but you're gonna see different versions of the leg drag, and I mean, they can work. Even just like low level, just throwing the legs off to the side to really mess with your opponent can still create predictable responses to follow stuff up. It's why it's such a great pass. So we just want to give you a much more in-depth way and a systematic way of looking at this, so that then you're going to have a higher chance of understanding it and having success with it and seeing how this ties into the knee cut, which we're also going to teach you in the next video.